Nikki Haley has called for politicians over 75 years old to, oh yes, to be required to take a mental health competency test. I wonder who that's aimed at. Both of them, right?
I think it's both. I think she's trolling. It allows her to draw attention to Biden. She's in a Republican primary, but it's a subtle hit on Trump. They're both older politicians. They have every right to run. The competency test is a really long campaign, and people will assess how they seem.
But shouldn't we do that for everybody? Why just over 75? Because, I mean, over here, my 35-year-old
House of Representatives.
Right.
Well, I mean, there's only one age requirement. The Constitution has a minimum age, and that was because they were so worried about people passing things on to their famous sons at the time. There's no maximum age, but we have that for pilots and other things. But again, I think it's hard. If you've covered these things, you know how it is. It's hard to run for president. We're going to see how they do. And then you're going to decide at the debates and other forums whether they seem like they got it.
The stage was set for a lively debate as Bill Maher kicked off real time with his signature wit, diving into Nikki Haley's provocative proposal for mental competency tests for politicians over 75. With a wry grin, he quipped about the absurdity of asking leaders entrusted with decisions about war and the economy to first prove they can handle a Sudoku puzzle, eliciting laughter from the audience. Turning to Ari Melber, Maher framed the debate as more than just a political stunt, pondering whether Haley's call was practical or simply just theater designed to jab at both Biden and Trump. Melber, ever sharp, highlighted the dual-edged nature of Haley's suggestion, which subtly targeted both older frontrunners while championing generational change. Together they questioned whether decades of experience in politics could outweigh occasional memory lapses, and reflected on the ultimate accountability of voters who considers older candidates. The conversation balanced humor with depth, setting the tone for a spirited discussion on the delicate interplay between age, experience, and competence in political leadership.
Well, and as Don Lemon told us on CNN, women actually can't run for president because he said we're past our prime once we get to our 40s. But since you have to be 35 to run, it's like this really tight window between 35 and 40.
But it presupposes that's the only way you can be mentally incompetent. I mean, I would take a guy who's 90 and forgets a few things, but he's seen a lot in his life and has the experience. And of course, if you have Alzheimer's and you're not there and you don't remember who your wife is, obviously that's a different story. But as opposed to somebody who's 40 and doesn't have a lot of experience, and yeah,
I think you're right. What's funny is I think ageism is real. We see it in a lot of industries.
Oh.
And we see it on a sexist basis as well, as I think you mentioned, which is fair. I just think that what's funny is the one place that you see less ageism in our public life would be politics. When you look at Pelosi, McConnell, the current president, the last president who's running for re-election. So while I do think it's a problem, I think we should be less ageist. We were talking about civil rights earlier. That's one of the things people discriminate on. Having said that, for whatever reason, incumbency, fame, other things, donor class.
And the voters are older.
The voters keep going back to some of the choices that are upper in the age bracket.
There's a movement in Europe going on right now, started by an older gentleman who had to deal with his bank. And the movement's called I'm Old, Not Stupid.
From an audience member's perspective, Nikki Haley's proposal for mental competency tests for politicians over 75 feels like a double-edged sword. On one hand, the idea resonates as a practical safeguard. After all, we already require similar assessments for other critical roles like pilots and surgeons, where lapses in judgment could have catastrophic consequences. Why should politicians, who wield immense power over national security, the economy, and societal well-being, be exempt from ensuring they're fully capable of performing their duties? On the other hand, there's something inherently uncomfortable about the potential for this policy to morph into age discrimination. Wisdom, experience, and a long history of public service are invaluable assets, and dismissing those contributions due to an arbitrary age cutoff risks undermining the value older leaders bring to the table. It also places an overly simplistic focus on age, when many younger politicians lack the knowledge or perspective to navigate complex issues effectively. What strikes me most is that this debate isn't just about age or cognition, it's about trust. Voters already assess candidates' mental and physical fitness during campaigns, debates, and public appearances. Imposing mandatory tests might signal a lack of faith in the public's ability to discern competence. While the idea of competency testing might appeal to those frustrated with the status quo, it also risks alienating a demographic that deserves respect and inclusion. Rather than framing the issue solely around age, perhaps the focus should be on creating a broader system of accountability for all leaders, regardless of when they were born.
New census data shows that California and New York saw a mass exodus, well, mass, I don't know, 500,000, wow, of people, with their populations dropping by around 500,000 people. And it doesn't say over, is that in a year? Maybe it is, or last couple of years. Can anything bring cost of living down in desirable places? Oh, I must have heard our discussion.
Florida, Tennessee, no state income tax.
Right.
Nice weather. And something else.
Well,
something else about those states.
Is this a referendum on the way we govern here in California and New York? I mean, obviously, looks like a blue state, red state thing.
I mean, a lot of it is big offices in big cities. Like, I live in Brooklyn. A lot of those big Manhattan towers haven't filled back up with people, but also that was an urban plan built a long time ago, and maybe it's evolving. I totally get it. I mean, in all fairness, I think it's fine if people don't want to be in these super expensive cities and go somewhere else, especially if they don't have to commute to one of those skyscrapers that often, then fine. But I think in New York, like, from what we can see anecdotally, I don't think all those buildings are going to fill back up.
They're not. And that's okay.
The ongoing migration from traditionally blue states like California and New York to lower tax, red-leaning states such as Florida and Tennessee highlights a significant shift in how Americans weigh quality of life, cost of living, and governance. This trend can be seen as a referendum on the policies of these blue states, where high taxes, soaring housing costs, and strict regulatory environments are pushing residents to seek alternatives. Critics argue that these exoduses reflect dissatisfaction with the economic burdens and urban challenges in states like New York and California, including crime, declining public infrastructure, and pandemic-era policies that accelerated remote work and reduced reliance on centralized urban hubs. Conversely, supporters of blue state policies contend that such migration doesn't tell the full story, emphasizing the cultural and professional opportunities these states offer and the complex socio-political dynamics driving the shift. While red states often tout their lower taxes and more business-friendly environments, questions remain about whether these states can maintain infrastructure and social services with smaller revenue bases. From my perspective, the mass movement signals a reevaluation of priorities among Americans, where affordability, governance, and personal freedom are being weighed more heavily than long-standing loyalties to urban hubs. It forces a deeper question. Are these migrations a temporary reaction to current pressures, or do they represent a broader cultural and economic realignment in the U.S.?
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the good things that happened with the pandemic was when time stopped, we got a chance to sort of like reassess. And we were saying to ourselves, why do we need to go to work 5 days? And we don't. Not from, you probably should work 5 days, but maybe you could get your work done in 4 days. They found when people work 80% of the time, if they get paid the same, they do the same amount of work. Because most people, in an 8-hour day, they work 3 hours. So why not? And, save all that commuter time. We come to the office once a week now. Well, obviously today to do the show. But other than, yeah, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. But other than that, once a week. And I feel that's perfect. We could do the rest of it at home. I don't need to see my lovely staff. I love them, but like once a week is perfect.
Here's the problem.
The shift to remote work during the pandemic has fundamentally transformed the workplace, sparking both optimism and concern. On the positive side, the flexibility of remote work has allowed employees to save time and money on commuting, achieve better work-life balance, and often maintain productivity levels. Many workers have embraced this change, arguing that they can accomplish as much, if not more, from the comfort of their homes. For businesses, the remote model has reduced overhead costs and opened access to a broader talent pool, unconstrained by geography. Thanks for tuning in and being part of the conversation. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep the discussions going, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button for more thought-provoking content. Your support means everything to us. See you next time.